Hi, Christine here. I'm just sitting outside of somebody else's garden right now, and my son's in for his violin lessons, and so I'm trying to be quiet because the window's not open, but I don't want to interrupt. And he's practicing My Immortal right now, Lindsey Sterling's rendition. Hard piece of music. Anyway, kind of got me to thinking today about how was it possible that we have created the legends around the deities that we have, and how my son's lesson actually relates to this in some way is back when I was about 11 years old. I started writing and had my first short story published when I was 12 in a local magazine, but one of the characters that I had created way back then was the god of music. And he kind of just was somebody I kept working on even through college. And I've only published a web page on him, and that's it, on his legend. But he's kind of been everywhere, and a tragic figure. And for the longest time, like one of the short stories about him that I had published at my community college was where he talked about how he got his guitar. And what had happened is he had looped through time and had given his guitar to this woman to hang on to for him, and that someday she would know who to hand it to. So when he was younger, he had met her and she had given him this instrument. Well, in some ways, when I told that story on paper, I was typing it, I was pretty much channeling it, and wasn't aware of anybody around me, my surroundings, anything, until I was completely done. So I sat there just spewing these letters out on the screen. And even my then fiance at the time said it was like I was somebody else completely. I just was not there. And David told his story. And that got me to thinking, because he was in some ways pretty real to me, and then sometimes he still is. And so it's like, I don't know, did I have access to another entity? Did I tap into some creative portion of my brain, racial memory? I mean, who knows what? But in some ways, this person actually existed. So that gets me to wondering how our legends of the gods were actually created, whether it was Jesus, whether it was anybody else. Who started? Who was the first person to say, hey, I just ran into somebody, or this thought just comes into their head? Who created the myth at the very beginning? And they're all myths. Whether we worship them or not, they're all myths. Christian, Buddhist, any of it. That doesn't mean we're right or wrong. Religion is supposed to be about our internal processes and making ourselves better, not trying to fix, trying to change everybody else. The first and foremost, our faith is about ourselves. But where did this stuff come from? And how long ago? If you think our version of this species has been around 200,000 years, and in the past we've been about 1 million to 1.5 million years in the making. When did all this begin, and who was the first one to think of these things and to think of these people that we had determined were gods? And how were the myths created? Was it somebody just suddenly channeling something, or a child obsessed with wishing that there was someone in existence that handled something so incredible as every sound every sine wave, every reverb, all music, whether we like it or not, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. That's why in some role playing I would get in in arguments with other gamers because they thought, oh, goddess of music, everything's got to be beautiful and perfect. And if your character's not beautiful, you can't have an orc bard level beyond a certain point because orcs are ugly. Well, I'm sorry, there's some really shitty music out there. There's stuff that you're just like, what the heck was that? But it's still music and it's still celebrating and it's still a part of the human condition. So the good, bad, and ugly does fit into all of it. So at that point, it's every sound, it's every process. And I was just wondering if anyone else had any thoughts on the gods and on music and on sound. And I'd called him David Dragonsong, that was his name. And like I said, in some ways he's still extremely real to me. I mean, it's like sometimes the thoughts will pop up. So I actually do have a place on my altar for him. And I wonder if anyone else has, over their years, created a myth that they didn't realize at the time what they were making. And then if you take a look at modern films, we're creating myths for future generations. Are they going to go on to deity status? Are there figures in history that are going to go on to deity status? You know, it's just thoughts I thought I'd throw out there. Stuff to contemplate. So anyway, you guys have a fantastic day. Blessed be.